Welcome, everyone. I'm Angelo Robles, host of the Angelo Robles podcast. I'm also the founder and CEO at Family Office Association. Today, we're covering in a wonderful interview overcoming pandemic fatigue and re-energizing for the long haul. Remote work and the global pandemic have turned many people's worlds upside down. Based on what most leaders and managers are experiencing at this stage of the COVID-19, we're very fortunate to feature a very special guest today. That would be Lynn Thomas, that will offer some very pragmatic views in terms of how to lead your family, your employees through COVID and re-energize them in your organization for the long haul. Well, on that note, of course, our special guest must be who I mentioned, and that would be Lynn Thomas. Lynn, welcome to the show.
I'm well, Angelo. I'm delighted to be here with you today and your members this morning.
Thank you.
Wanted to talk about overcoming pandemic fatigue and re-energizing for the long haul. I think many of us knew, or many of us thought this would be a sprint, but it's been a long marathon. So if it is your business, your family, we are all pretty challenged by many of the aspects of living during this pandemic. So I've designed this to really look at management issues, and that could be, as I said, about your family, your office, the employees. I'm going to cover some of the management challenges that seem to be most relevant and most common, but there are many of them. 5 easy tips of how to successfully manage if you have employees working remotely or hybridly. And then I offer for anybody, if they wanted, just a 1-hour free Zoom session. So many people have liked this and they wanted some way to get my insights. So I'm delighted to do that if that works for you. So the impact of COVID, as we probably all have known, is that it has just created acute and severe crises of security regarding health, food, social, employment. It's really not left any organization or family or business without huge impact. You know, here's a young man who's probably telling his daughter can't go out to play with her friends, maybe a student or a worker who's just exhausted, and a mom who's trying to balance maybe homeschooling and work. And these came up, this is all the data I'll give here is from October, which is latest. But the concerns, obviously, are family safety, and this is on a 7-point scale: economic impact, job security, social impact, salary reductions, etc. What one of my clients did when COVID happened is he assured, and it's a family-owned business, that nobody would be laid off, there'd be no changes in anything in the organization through the end of last year, which really allowed his people to relax, stay focused. You want to really tune into your people and making sure they're not overly stressed, their needs are being taken care of by themselves, or possibly if the organization can help in some way. But we'll talk about the role of the leader. But the family safety is obviously most important. And what are the stress levels? What people have said when they've been, when they were interviewed, is that basically 67% said these are the highest stress levels since the outbreak. And some very fortunate people actually have less stress, and maybe just not commuting was not working for them. And there's 25% in the middle. There's another story I can tell you about asking people who are around 9/11 and the recession of 27, 28, is that this was 3 times more stressful than either of those. So for many people, it's just hit so many aspects of their lives. And it's really, chronic high stress is one thing when you have stress, like some stress is actually good. It gets us moving and getting things done. When we have high levels of stress for a long period of time, which is what we've had, 85% of people say they're not engaged at work. 81% considering leaving. Socially isolated, which is not probably to be unexpected. 75, but these are high numbers. Many think that leaders are not effective. They're not supporting them, but you'll see some information about that later, in their mental health and their physical health, as well as giving them the tools and the skills they need. Greater anxiety, managers not listening to them, People are just emotionally exhausted. There's, as of October of last year, 75% of employees in the United States said that they were burnt out, which is probably the emotional exhaustion. So it has increased since this. This was a new and pretty startling one, which 49% of people who've never had any mental health issues for the first time are having them because of COVID. And part of what's going on is that if people are working remotely or a hybrid, that the boundaries at home are blur a bit, and to really give people permission to start at a certain time and end at a certain time. In general, people are working 3 hours longer at home. So over a given week, that's 15 hours, and that's a substantial amount. So boundaries at home. And there are some organizations I've worked with and some families where they force people to take like a 3-day weekend or take time off, or if people are highly stressed, it's just go take care of yourself and your family. They need to have your support in doing that. No sense of belonging to the work community that people had before. And what's really interesting is if you ask executives of lots of organizations, 71% said high employee engagement is key to the organization's success. So we have 85% not engaged and a certain percentage is the rest. We've got some engagement to increase, and we've got some things to work on. So we'll take a deep breath and let's talk about what's happening because of the chronic stress. So we have, these are actually statements that were said to me by various different clients. Separation from home and work used to have your commute, if that was relevant. Missing their coworkers. Some, it's impacting their children and their marriage. Isolated and alone. Angry, lost, sad, bewildered. And when will COVID end? Which is probably the question we all have and we hear. I want to say something about just grief and loss. There is how to have the conversations around work, around any grief of how things used to be, what we've lost. Some things will come back, some will not. But that is a conversation that used to never be really pertinent that much at work. It is really now. Even if people are, quote, happier at home or happier, or really it's not impacted them, it's impacted their neighbors, their family, restaurants they went to. So there's our life has just totally been in an upheaval. So this man's thoughts, they're constantly going on. Our brain wants to solve problems, and that's what it's trying to do. So just a little neuroscience here. The amygdala, which is the part of our brain, it's deep in the reptilian part of our brain. It's in charge of our fight or flight, which we've probably all heard about. And it gives us a shot of adrenaline or cortisol. And that's basically, it cuts off the frontal cortex of our brain, which is where we do the thinking, the planning, the analyzing, because it says you don't have to do any of that. Your life is in danger. All you need to do is fight or flight. Okay. We don't have control over what our amygdala does. We can't really regulate that. And what winds up happening is you have this, what I call amygdala hijack in action. So most of us maybe have this 2 or 3 times a week. We'd have a new experience, something new and different. So it's a strong and immediate, overwhelming emotional reaction. It's not logical, it's emotional, which is disproportionate to the stimulus because there's a perceived deeper emotional threat to our lives. Now, most of us do not have threats to our lives on a daily basis. Evolutionarily, our brain has not caught up. It's not caught up with the pace of change. We have to be agile. We have to move much more quickly. We're not built for that. So what winds up happening is that there are certain periods of time when we have an amygdala hijack happening that we're running on pure emotion and there's no logic around. Some examples that we probably all can relate to. Impulsive reactions. We're a little more short-tempered. We can snap at somebody, write in angry emails in all caps, maybe tell your boss off, or tell your kids for a kid mistake. So what's happened is cortisol stays in our body for 24 to 36 hours. What I have read and believe is happening is we are all running on lots of cortisol, because if this is happening, let's say even once a day, we never escape that because it could be in our body for up to 36 hours. So that's the chronic stress. That's why all the issues I mentioned before are happening, and sort of the fabric inside all of us that we've had is slowly being uh, endangered, broken. Our coping mechanisms don't work for this long stress periods of time. So this is what's happening inside all of us, is we have to change all of our routines and how we interact with our children and our spouses and our families and neighbors and religious communities. There's just so much upheaval. And our brain likes patterns. It likes to keep us comfortable, etc. So these are 5 easy tips to manage employees who are working remotely or hybrid. For all leaders, and this could be even a leader of a family, the leaders of organizations and employees, they're in charge of the energy of the workforce. So if the morale, the motivation, the momentum is not really moving, it's really up to the leader to know what's going on with the workforce. You have to cultivate high quality relationships. And I believe most of you in family office businesses do have that. So that's one third of this taken care of. And demonstrate a capacity for resilience to recharge the organization for the long haul. So we'll talk about resilience and how to demonstrate that. So practice something called extreme humanism. We'll talk about that. Lead with empathy and kindness. Communicate intentionally and often. Cultivate resiliency and adaptability. And the last one is lead fun and engaging virtual meetings. Okay. So extreme humanism. This is from Tom Peters. He is the most expensive consultant in the United States. And he has a book coming out next month in March. And he said, extreme humanism is people first, period, full stop. If your people are not well, they're not focused, they have other things on their mind, they need to go take care of that. He's pretty radical in what he believes around it, but there's great wisdom in that, because if you don't take care of your people, or they perceive you're not, or, I mean, this is a moment for a legacy. People remember how they were treated in 9/11. I had a client who was in the World Trade Tower 2. And to this day, I will still hear people say they treated us so well. They were there at every moment. So there's something that was one cataclysmic day and afterwards, but this is over a long period of time. How do you model being there 100% for the employees? Because everyone remember how they were treated by their employer during COVID. So the vital role that you all have is to genuinely care about your employees and their families. And that's probably something you pretty much do as a family business, family office, but there probably needs to be taken maybe to another level. So deep social and emotional connections with your employees. Caring is glue. I can tell you from the work that I've done over 30 years around client and employee loyalty and retention, when people leave an organization, it's usually about the relationship they have with their superior. And the bottom line comes down to at least 2/3, they don't care. And caring is super glue. It's just amazing of what it can do. But how you may want to express your care and how an employee sees that you care maybe is a conversation. So for a new employee, what I always recommend is to say, I really want to show that I care about you. How can I do that? Because for some people, it varies greatly. Some people, it may be giving them time off. Others, it may be just asking them how they're doing. Others, it may be giving them more difficult work that you really value them, which is caring. So just not take for granted that caring alone is enough. Introducing more human-centered principles that truly put talent and people at the heart of your organizational success. So people, and the next one goes along with it, that the organizations that are doing best during COVID are becoming more intensely human, nurturing for the very best elements of emotion, creativity, and human connection. And it's important to keep reviewing and seeing what are the elements of how can you make your organization more human, how to nurture, how to connect with people. That's what everybody needs. And also, COVID will leave some ashes, figuratively, and As Linda Hill of Harvard Business School said, she says the people who can learn the quickest in new and disrupted, constantly changing work environments will be the most successful. So really being agile, which we'll talk about a little later, is what you can best do for your employees, for your family, for your organization. So this was pretty fascinating. I referred to this earlier, that 74% of executives felt that they are providing the skills their employees need to be successful, but only 38% of employees said that. And the other one, supporting mental and physical health and providing clear guidance and expectations, there's about a 30% gap. So if your perception is things are not good, the news about this is they're worse than you think they are, about 36%. Because we've been trained to a certain extent in business really not to speak the truth or the whole truth. And what's the impact of genuinely caring on employees? So 60% say they will stay with the organization 3 years or longer if they feel that you care about them. If you don't care, it's down to about 31%. 95% feel included. And if the opposite, how many feel included if they don't care, it's about 23. And 91% would recommend the organization to a friend. So if you know of Net Promoter Score, that would be in the promoter area, which would be excellent. And they would recommend, I think it's down to about 47% the last, that would recommend an organization if they didn't feel they were genuinely cared about. So it's really genuine, and to really care about them and their families. Lead with empathy and kindness. These are extraordinary times. Your people are human and they need you. We tend to look to people of authority during times of crises, illnesses, and tragedies, and we look for direction, protection, and order. And it's important that, as best you can, to be genuine and also to manifest yourself as a leader. So practice and discuss with your employees the need for self-care. What are you doing? I know of one organization I'm working with, all their meetings, they start out with talking about what they've done in the past 24 hours to take care of themselves or their families. Because we're, at least in America, we're not the best at taking care of ourselves. We tend to get stressed and not be as careful. Also, emotional intelligence, critically important during this time, has really jumped to the top of the skills that leaders, managers need to be able to tune in emotionally and interpersonally to people. And the key job really with empathy and kindness is to lead, listening for signs of exhaustion and other responses to stress. Sometimes people don't know what they're, 36% of people know what they're feeling at any given time. So 2/3 of people are not really clear on what they're feeling, and especially around work. 45% report the first times in their lives they have mental health issues. Acknowledging this reality, eliminating any shame or embarrassment, and getting them the help they need, if that's an appropriate response. The third is communicate intentionally and often. Remember, this is not business as usual, it's extreme humanism. So people are first, everything else comes after that. So if you don't think you're over communicating, you're not communicating enough. The Stockdale paradox, I want to spend a little time on this. I'm actually doing a bunch of research on it and coming up with a COVID human connection skill set. And Stockdale paradox comes from a gentleman, an Admiral James Stockdale, who was a POW in Vietnam for 7.5 years. And what he noticed, well, he took on the responsibility of keeping the other POWs uplifted and positive about at some point they'd be freed. What he noticed was people who were optimistic, and that's how he labeled them, that thought, oh, we'll be out by Christmas, or we'll be out by Easter or Thanksgiving, and that didn't happen, did not fare well mentally. So he came up with what he called bounded optimism tempered by reality. So as a leader, you have to be optimistic, but you have to temper that with reality. So he would say, we're going to be freed. I don't know when, and there'll be some rough times, I'm sure, but I know we will be freed. And he felt this inside himself. This was his own strong belief. Because it helps people, some people are waiting to get back to the old normal or the new normal. many people think where we are now is where the post-COVID workforce will look a lot like it is now, a combination of remote, hybrid. Some will be on site, but fewer than they were before. So if this is what we're dealing with, accepting it, accept the reality of where we are, what can we do under these circumstances, and go from there, as opposed to the expectation of things changing. They will change, but nobody knows when or exactly how. And lead people to more acceptance of where they are rather than waiting, quote, waiting to return to work. Compassion and sensitivity. Another client, I start the meetings with a check-in 1 to 10. 1 is actually not well, 10 is great. And the manager usually starts. And especially if he or she's not doing well. So the first time this was done, the manager gave himself a 4, and there were 3 other people out of 7 that gave themselves a 4. So that gives permission for people not to feel well. And maybe at that point, those people will take the rest of the day off, or 1 or 2 of them get to take the time off. Because if you're at a 4, you're probably not going to perform at your best. And you deserve to have employees be really superb and excellent in what they do. And COVID is definitely stressing that in all of us. Ask for their suggestions and input and ideas. And be available. Virtual office hours, if that you can do that, that has been received very, very well, that people can just pop in and have a quick one-to-one discussion with you. So ask it how they are. Give them permission not to be okay. It's natural to feel the stress, the anxiety, the grief, and the worry. Help them find coping activities, support systems. I'm not sure with each of you as a family office how much the family is actually there, and also seeking professional resources. But knowing people do need extra support, because we don't have the support we used to have. We don't have the neighborhoods. We don't have the schools. We don't have the our family, our friends around the support systems we naturally had. So everyone's pretty isolated, much more than they used to be. Cultivating resiliency and adaptability. So this is from Linda Hill, as I said, from Harvard Business School. The employees who can adapt and learn in the new and disruptive work environments will be the most successful. So we don't know how this will disrupt all environments. It'll have an impact on probably everyone a little bit differently. And I want to say just a little bit, my background is I'm a tax attorney by training. I used to work with Arthur Andersen and then left there, went to Bank of Boston as a private banker and then as a change agent, and left there. I was disenchanted with how they treated their clients and employees, and knew there had to be a better way. So I was quite able to pivot and change. And that has a lot to do with, if I look back at it and look at people who do it now, with getting people lots of skills. It's a great time to train people. Everybody can upscale, especially around digital technology. So it is a way to cultivate resiliency and adaptability, which is important. So we all know plans, priorities, and expectations will continuously change. And all, as leaders and managers, you need to bounce back from setbacks and make clear and decisive decisions. One client of mine said, my people want to know there's somebody at the helm. And I think that's true. Nobody wants the most senior person not to know exactly what's going on. You may change your mind after you change your mind, but to bounce back and, okay, so this is what we're going to be doing for the short term, and that can be changed. And empowering your people by what if scenarios. What if this goes on through 2024, 2022? How does that impact us? What will we look at? What would we change? And at least freeing people to think of different ways of doing things, and they will not be as blindsided perhaps in the future, as I do believe we're going to be having more disruptions. So here, invest, upgrade, and accelerate your employees' skills sets, all about upscaling. A comment here is I hear people say they want to upgrade their software, their hardware. I don't see they want to upgrade their employees' skills. So I think the same thing applies annually, to have training to get people skills more up to date and really to be top notch. And the way resiliency is really done, we used to think the brain was what it was, and there was no ability to really change our brain much. But with neuroplasticity and a lot of research out of MIT, Through mindfulness, meditation, growth mindset, positive expectations, we can, with the amygdala, we can decrease the impact the amygdala has by acknowledging the feelings and emotions. And many of the mindful stress reducing tools that we know about do help to rewire our brain to respond differently. I don't think any of us are ever going to jump up and say, yay, we really love COVID, or a disruption to this extent, but we'll be less shocked and surprised. This was, I believe, in August of last year. So there, 39% of people felt less productive. And these were just employees in general, not necessarily remotely, but the strain of COVID does have a negative impact. And I would think this has increased. The fifth is leading fun and engaging virtual meetings. So meetings are a place for you to exercise leadership and set the tone for your community and lightness. I guarantee all employees, all people are starved for human connections and genuine caring. So being able to connect with them. It's said every week a manager should spend roughly 30, if they're working remotely, 30 minutes total over a week of connecting with that employee one-to-one, because there probably is nobody else in their life asking them, how are you doing? Genuinely, like, what's going on? And getting them to say more than just fine. Appreciate your employees and encourage them to appreciate each other. It's a very powerful motivator to be genuinely appreciated. And again, if you're not genuine about it, I would just not appreciate people, because I think we've all had a lot of people tell us things that weren't true, and we can tell when it's not true. So it's not something that's very easy for many managers to do, but it's really appreciated by employees. And if priorities change, make sure you clarify them, and celebrate those short wins. You want to create the energy, the momentum, the enthusiasm, the high morale, the excitement of moving forward, because there are, where there are challenges, there's always opportunities. So celebrate all successes bigger than usual. And one client I was working with, once a week having a meeting, and a number of people there wanted to have interject a fun theme. So one, it was wearing different hats. One was bringing in a baby picture. There's many fun ways you can interject that into the teams. But the idea here is really a bunch of people can take that on. You as a leader or manager do not have to do that. So allow them to take on some of the responsibility. And it helped a lot. People got much more engaged. And another way to keep people engaged is not sitting still. The worst way for us to learn anything, and it's the way we do it in schools a lot, is to sit passively and listen. So if you can have your employees say, oh, make sure they write this down, take a note. You can have them maybe take a stretch break, or just twist in their chair back and forth, any kind of movement, even lifting up their phones as they're doing in the picture here. That will create, the brain is taking in more, and they will remember more, and it'll be more of a potent meeting. It can be challenging, but you can have people clap. There's many ways to do it, and have fun interjecting them into your meeting. So the 5 tips really, practice extreme humanism. People are first. Empathy, kindness, deep and genuine caring. Regularly over-communicate to create deep social and emotional connections with your employees. You need to develop skills to cultivate resiliency and adaptability. And make virtual meetings informative, engaging, and fun. So I'm just putting up here, I'm willing, for anybody who sees this and throughout 2021, a 1-hour free Zoom session. And how I've worked with many different, some clients and some prospects, talking about a plan, how do they overcome pandemic fatigue and re-energize the organization? Brainstorming sessions, just discussions and implementations for the rest of COVID and post-COVID. How to get employees energized, how to get them engaged, how to have a more human-centered organization. What are the key message and action steps that your employees need to hear from you? What are some action steps you can take now to create a positive post-COVID work environment? And conduct a SWOT analysis. You could do this for your organization. You can do it by department, by employee. There's many ways to do that. So I'm willing and eager to help people who are finding these times to be stressful, and that doesn't seem to be abating. It has some impact on your work, your family, your life. So all of our work, we guarantee 100 to 300% return on investment within 1 year. A little about my background. I told you I'm one of 12 client experience retention experts in the country. I'm the only one who works with professional service companies. And I've had authored 2 books and a columnist, and I've spoken in over 500 conferences and conventions. So, and I thank you very much for your interest. I'm hoping you found some valuable takeaways, and thank you very much.
And Lynn, I'm back. If you could release controls of the screen share, we could interact a little bit as we conclude.
Sure.
And that should do it. There it goes. Perfect. Well, one, it was a pleasure to listen as well as watch your presentation. Very insightful, and I learned. I suppose some of the big things that I'm getting from people are the children of my members and relationships, and generally younger people in general. Let's especially like 18 to 22, kind of, COVID came, the college experience changed. It's now virtual. There's not the level of maybe independence or interaction. But the bigger picture question I'm getting, especially from those that are like junior and seniors, is like, what is the world going to look like for me? Am I going to get a job? Is this the time to start a business? Some general takeaways that I've learned over the years is, like you need to put in terms of what you want to get out of school. It's not all on your professors. Actually, pure knowledge, you could go on YouTube, you could Google, you're probably going to get 99% of what you want. It's the human element, the interaction, the communication, the clarifying who you are and your purpose that are going to be more valuable. And I wanted to know from your deep background in traditional kind of finance and tax and law, but also understanding the psychology and the human element, your opinion about all of this and how the younger people feel.
Well, I have a 19-year-old daughter, so I know well about that. She actually took this year off because of COVID and took a gap year. She 1 year, she was at Ithaca College as a freshman. It is challenging. I've talked to a number of her friends, some of their parents, and I think what you say has a lot of validity in it. I think looking at, they will pivot. It said that high school students now will have 7 different careers, not jobs, careers. So for them to just become knowledgeable and passionate about one area, if they have that, that's great. That'll take them wherever, as long as they are willing, as you said, to dive in, to do the work. But the interactions, if they can do it over Zoom, interact, and get those interactions and how to interact with people, because what we're losing, the emotional intelligence, we're losing that interaction ability. People are not learning, young kids too, with social emotional learning young. But find something they're passionate about and go for it. And like you said, of course, there's all on the web. There's many courses you can take that have no expense. You can learn, keep learning. Don't ever spend a year, if you're taking time off, quote unquote, never spend a year without learning something. Because I was speaking with a gentleman who helps kids get into college and or afterwards too, if they transfer, and say the first question they get asked by colleges and also employers is, what have you done during COVID, or what have you done to better yourself? And if there's not some reasonable response to that, that would definitely be a negative, because we want people who are go-getters, who will get up, who will, there's a saying, it's like there's people who make things happen, there's people who watch things happen, and there's people who wonder what's happening. So I think we all want our kids to be people who are making things happen, and being out there and being engaged in the working world, in the world, and meeting as many different people as possible. Diversity, inclusion, all of that. And I think innately, the Gen Zs are very comfortable with people of more ethnic and racial backgrounds and than previous generations. But it is really staying focused, finding something you really love, going for it, and that can change and that can pivot. You know, it's like my daughter's now interested in photography, and now she wants to look at graphic design, and I'm like, fine, go ahead. You know, take some courses, find out what she loves, because there's so much out there. There's so many wonderful courses that you can take and things that you can learn at you know, community ed even, but just keep the brain going, keep it learning, keep people's thirst for new and better, because that's going forward. We're going to have this, you know, we're a global community, Angelo, and people are going to be, you know, if there's infections in the United States, it's going to spread around the world and vice versa. So we're going to have these disruptions and pandemics and different things more frequently. I don't know how frequently, but it's not going to be something that is once in a decade, once in a century, as they said. So I think getting our children ready to be able to adapt and pivot is probably the best skill that we can give them, and the ability for them to advocate for themselves. So,
no, certainly all good points. And there are no easy answers. We're given advice from our experiences and hopefully a little bit of forward looking. But some of the things that we're talking about for that age bracket and then moving forward, the world is changing. Deep tech is creating quantum computing technologies, AI, robotics. You mentioned, not to scare your daughter, but there's a program that is probably going to go live relatively soon. And basically, you do some things, you answer questions at the click of a button, it creates an incredible design and website. So there's so many different things that are going to be more automated moving forward. Some of it will take 10 or 20 years, true. Some of it will happen in the next year or two. COVID is simply accelerating that.
yes.
The most common questions I get from people of that age bracket, usually there's some interest in business, entrepreneurship, and finance. And I see some of their resumes because I get resumes that come into me.
Mhm.
And unless you went to a top 15 school, after that top 15, they're all going to look the same to me as an employer per se. Yeah, you went to Harvard, Yale, Stanford, it's going to pop out a little bit, but that just makes you stand out to me for 2 or 3 seconds. Let's see if you still get my attention. So the vast majority I get are bland and boring. They don't show me how you feel and what you're going to do for me.
Right.
And in the world of finance and entrepreneurship, is your Gen Z status going to be a benefit? The answer is it could be. So what are you doing on your communication, your social media, how you could benefit me? If you're involved in finance, are you fluid on the tech companies that the young people use that are on the rise that I may overlook? Are you fluid on Bitcoin, digital assets? What makes you different that would stand out to me? How you think and how you ask questions. And are you a self-starter, like you said? Those are all things that are going to be important to me, not that you went to the 16th through 400 best college in America. That means nothing. I mean, I probably have more questions than I have answers, but why don't we leave it at that? This has been great. Certainly gives an opportunity for a part 2 and a topic that we should cover more frequently. You did have a chance to showcase a little bit how people can engage and reach out. So I think we're all good there. Lynn, it's been a pleasure. I look forward to the next time.
Thank you very much. Pleasure too, Angelo. Take care.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.